We're going to talk about in section 4.2 interest, and specifically compound interest and compound continuously interest. So normally before we talked about interest, we talked about simple interest, and simple interest is just the principal times the rate times time in years. Right, so the P in all these problems, and there is a P right here. There is the P in all these problems relates to principal. Principal or the present value, the amount deposited. So that money deposited. All right, so how much you put in. R in all three of these is the rate, and that needs to be a decimal. Okay, so that needs to be a decimal. So if it gives you like 4%, you need to move the decimal over 2 spots to the left. All right. The T stands for time in years. So that is how long are you doing this loan, or how long are you investing money for? So it is time in years. The A in these is the amount in the account, or the future value. Future value. You know, how much do you get at that very end? Okay, how much you've collected after all the interest has been collected. Okay, so the only difference here on this top one is it's compounded a number of times, right? Well, that number of times is n. How many times it's compounded in a year? So how many times the interest is compounded in a year? Is compounded in 1 year. Okay, so sometimes they'll say like biannually, so that means twice a year. Quarterly means 4 times a year. Monthly, 12, and so on from there. Okay, so it's how many times in 1 year, and T stands for how long do they do it for. So that's why it's raised to the NT here, because it's number of times they do it in a year and for how many years. So it's this NT is the grand total number of times that it's been compounded. This N is also underneath here. R is on top, and it's 1 plus that. So I need to do, if I'm working on my calculator, probably I can enter all this in at the same time, really. You just got to make sure you have enough parentheses and stuff. But you would do this in the calculator first, then you would add 1 to it, and then you would raise that to whatever NT is, and then you would times it by your principal, and that would give you the amount in the account at the end of your investment period. Compound continuously, the big difference is here is in a word problem they have to use the word continuously. Okay, so if they don't use the word continuously, it's going to be compound, normal compound interest. Okay, so this is A PERT. A equals P times E, and E is being raised to the RT. Okay, so again, you could do that on your calculator. This E button is the E button on your calculator, and it's above the LN button. So you have to do Shift LN, and it'll automatically bring up like a parenthesis or something like that. So you could really put this in just like your calculator. Type in whatever the principal is, push the E button, it'll automatically bring up a parenthesis or a box or something like that, and you can type your rate, which needs to be in decimal, times your time, and then end your parenthesis, push enter, and that will give you your number. All right, let's do a few examples here. All right, so if you deposited $1,000 into an account paying 4% interest, and it's compounded quarterly 4 times per year, find the amount in the account after 10 years with no withdrawals. Okay, so there's no withdrawals. Then after we find that, then we want to find how much interest is collected. And the interest collected would just be how much we deposited versus how much we got at the end. If we subtract those, that would be the amount of interest. So we have $1,000. So think about what is that? Well, that's our principal. Amount paying 4% interest. So what's this 4% interest? Well, that's our rate. 4% interest, or 0.04. All right, so we're going to use that 0.04. It's compounded quarterly, so those key words here, compounded quarterly. Since it's not continuously, that means we're going to use this one. A equals P times quantity 1 plus R over N raised to NT. Okay, so compounded quarterly, that means 4 times per year, so that's our N. So our N equals 4. And then our T is for how long? Well, how long is right here? 10 years. So our T equals 10. Now we can enter all those in. A equals 1,000. 1 plus our R, which is 0.04, over our N, which is 4, and then raised to the 4 times 10. And then we can enter that just like that in the calculator, and it will give us our answer. Or we can take this 0.04 and divide that by 4 first. Okay, but you can directly enter this into the calculator. You just want some practice just doing it. But I'm just going to do it by 1 at a time. So this is 0.01. 1 plus that is 1.01. I'm not going to times by 1,000 yet because I got to do parentheses first. And then I go to exponents, which I can do 4 times 10, which is 40. Now, sometimes you might have decimals that go on forever, right, in your calculators, or at least go to the nines place or something like that out there. Do not round these. You don't want to round these because if you round these interest problems, that means you're missing out on money. Okay, so don't round these problems. That's why it's best if you can enter it all in your calculator. But always use that. If you go about it slowly, which is fine, just make sure if it does go on forever there, that you hold those numbers in there, okay? And then so we can take 1.01, and on my calculator I can push this hat button, and then type in my 4. I could do my 4 times my 10, or I can just do 40, right? And so that gives me a number that 0.48886, and then if I round it, I'm leaving out some money. So I want to keep that in there before times my 1,000. So since I have that number, and I can just push times without even rounding it, and then type in 1,000, and it'll say answer times 1,000. And there is an answer button on your calculator. I believe it's probably a second, but you might have to push shift though. But you can take that and times it by 1,000. And then, or just move the decimal over 3 places, and you get 1488.86. Now I can go ahead and round because now I'm talking about money, and I can't go out to the 3rd decimal place, right? I can go out to pennies. Okay, so that's how you do these type of problems. Let's see the same type of problem, but let's just do compound continuously. So let's do the same thing except for compound continuously. So here you go. So again, our principal is 1,000, our rate is 0.04, our time is 10, but this year we're going to do continuously, so we're using a PERT, and so 1,000 times E raised to the 0.04 times T, which is 10, and I can enter this just in my calculator just like that. I put 1,000, I push the E button, which is a second ln, or shift ln, brings up a parenthesis, I can push 0.04, and then I can push times by 10, and I can push parenthesis to end my parenthesis and hit equals, and I get 11491.82. So we can see that is a lot, that's a few dollars more, right? So compound continuously is a lot better. Alright, so that's how you do these problems. I'm going to do the homework. I'll just put another video out to do the homework. But here's how you do these problems. Also, if you could be given an amount in the count at the end, and then you could solve for P. By here, we would just take A divided by ERT, right? That would equal the present value, how much I need to invest. Okay, so there you go. I'll put it on another video for the actual homework problems.